Hey folks, Mark Levin here. Now, before we dive in today's episode, I want to talk about something truly valuable, protecting your financial future with gold. It's called diversification. Now, for that, I only trust Advantage Gold. They're the real deal with 5-star service and a sterling reputation. So give them a call today. Call Advantage Gold at 800-900-8000. Tell them Mark Levin sent you. Trust me, you'll thank yourself in the future. Now let's get to the show. Results may vary. Consult with your financial professional.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
America, Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. Holy moly, are we loaded? I don't mean me personally. We are loaded. Loaded, loaded, loaded. And yet I'm going to start with something that may seem a little obscure. But I want to discuss this with you because it demonstrates how our bureaucracy works, how Joe Biden lies, and the media go along with it. That's what I want to do. And we'll see if I can get to it in time to do it. But before we get to that, this is from the Washington Free Beacon. This is part of it, but there's more to discuss. You've seen this big brouhaha because Benjamin Netanyahu put out this video that's 45 seconds long, and he basically said in a very, very polite, almost passive way, he said, look, thank you for everything you're doing, Mr. Biden and Mr. Blinken, but we have arms and ammunition in the pipeline that we can't seem to get as we're trying to finish off Hamas, and we're about to go to war with Hezbollah. What's that all about? You told us you would look into it, and we just want to make sure we get it. So they went to their favorite propagandist, who's actually an Israeli that stabs his own government in the back, Barak Ravin, at Axios, which is a left-wing site. And they go to their favorite brothers and sisters at Politico and the Washington Post, and then it takes off all over the place, and Netanyahu comes under attack. And Netanyahu said today, look, I'll take all the personal attacks as long as we can get what we need and defend our country. And what did he do that was so offensive? Well, he revealed that the Biden administration is slow-walking ammunition and weapons. Now, they're not slow-walking it to Iran. All kinds of billions of dollars have gone to Iran, and they're busy buying weapons and manufacturing weapons, and they're an eye blink away from having nuclear weapons, and we have funded all this. You and me. And in fact, Biden funded October 7th. That's right. And I'll say it forever. But here's a piece from Adam Credo over at the Free Beacon. The Biden administration stopped fast-tracking weapons to Israel in early January after a pressure campaign from Democrat lawmakers who oppose American support for Israel's war to eradicate Hamas. A Republican senator said today, federal law allows the president to forego formal congressional notifications on arms sales when emergencies exist. And the Biden administration invoked this power last year as it worked to quickly provide Israel with the arms it needed to combat Hamas. But the administration stopped acknowledging the emergency in Israel after receiving a letter from nearly 20 congressional Democrats in January urging it to end expedited weapons sales to Israel, said Senator Tom Cotton. This man's a great patriot, Tom Cotton. He wrote in a Thursday letter pressing the White House to explain the delay in arms shipment to Israel. Now, the big issue here is how Biden and Blinken know the bureaucracy works with them, know how to use the bureaucracy, and after Netanyahu released that really harmless video to tell the whole world what was going on, they trashed him. They said, we don't know what he's talking about. We don't know what he's talking about. We're not stopping anything. They're lying to us. Cotton wrote, your administration is engaged in bureaucratic sleight of hand to withhold this crucial aid to Israel during a shooting war. According to the letter that he wrote, you're playing politics with the nation's honor and our allies' security. Worse still, your administration lacks the honesty to communicate its true policy to the American people. That's what's key, instead preferring to hide behind weasel words and bureaucratic process. The letter comes just days after Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu publicly accused Biden of withholding U.S. weapons and ammunition that the Jewish state is relying on to eradicate Hamas in the Gaza Strip and combat a growing threat from Hezbollah on its northern border. The White House denied the accounts, saying it doesn't know what Netanyahu is talking about, but said it had delayed shipments of 2,000-pound and 500-pound bombs. Cotton, a member of the Senate Armed Services Committee, says the administration is being dishonest about the delay, that it has not sent an assortment of promised weapons, prolonging Israel's war and endangering its soldiers at a time when both Hamas and Hezbollah continue to rearm, regroup, and coordinate attacks on Israeli civilians. Can you imagine this? Now, the enemy knows this is going on. The Democrats know. The Defense Department knows. The federal military contractors know. Everybody knows but you and me. But now we do, thanks to Tom Cotton. What I want to get into after the break is this bureaucratic morass that you have to go through to get arms to a friendly ally. But the way that you cut through it is the President of the United States calls it an emergency, and they cut through all the red tape, and they get the ammunition and the weaponry to where it needs to go. Well, Biden put his foot on the brake. And so when they say, we don't know what he's talking about, they know exactly what he's talking about. The Arms Export Control Act requires the administration to notify Congress before sending weapons to a foreign country, Cotton said. Your administration has manipulated this requirement by withholding this formal notification to Congress of approved weapons sales, including F-15s, tactical vehicles, 120-millimeter mortars, 120-millimeter tank rounds, joint direct attack munitions, and small-diameter bombs. Your administration can then claim that the weapons are in process while you never deliver them. You got that? But they can't get them to Ukraine fast enough. This bureaucratic delay tactic has allowed the Biden administration to deny accusations of withholding arms to Israel, while also placating the far-left flank of the Democrat Party that is pressing the president to punish Israel based on false charges of genocide, according to Cotton. Now, this is why they have a guy like Barak Ravin. This guy's an Israeli. He used to or still does write for Israeli papers, but he's hired by Axios. And the Biden regime, Blinken in particular, Sullivan and the others, they go directly to him because he will transcribe what they say and he will run with it. He hates Netanyahu and he hates the government in Israel. He's a horrendous backstabbing mouthpiece for the Biden administration, in my humble opinion. And so he puts out this story in Axios under breaking or a scoop, and then all the other media run with it. But, of course, he doesn't explain what's actually taking place, the truth of what's taking place. After Netanyahu's accusations this week, the United States reportedly released one ship carrying an arms supply. But Cotton said this modest step doesn't cure the damage done by the delay. He said any delays to military support to Israel blatantly disregard Congress's bipartisan mandate to supply Israel with all it needs to defeat Hamas terrorists and other Iranian-backed groups. Our ally is under sustained threat, and we must use all available resources to expedite military aid. The senator is asking the White House to come clean about the status of U.S. arms shipments to Israel and to detail what has been paused in recent months amid a pressure campaign from anti-Israel activists and Democratic lawmakers in Congress. This is Biden listening to Bernie Sanders, Tlaib, AOC, Omar, the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. He's choking off Israel while he provided over $100 billion to Iran, and while Qatar and other countries are pouring money into Hamas and Hezbollah. And they trash and attack Netanyahu. They try and set him up like, well, I don't know what he's talking about. And then like it's a dirty trick or it's a dirty play. So we're going to postpone our meeting over what? Over the Iran nuclear progress. What? This is the same propaganda operation that Donald Trump has to deal with, that Sam Alito has to deal with, that Clarence Thomas has to deal with, that the Speaker of the House has to deal with. It's the same thing. Cotton asked the White House to explain by July 1 what weapons and ammunition are being withheld from Israel, including any weapons or ammunition delayed more than 2 weeks beyond their original delivery date. This is to include a detailed list of all foreign military and direct commercial arms sales requested by Israel and the current status of each request. Cotton also wants to know about any weapons or ammunition Israel has requested to be expedited, the status of each request, and an explanation for the status. The senator says that if Congress must intervene to fast-track any outstanding weapons, it will do so. White House envoy Amos Hochstein reportedly chastised Netanyahu earlier this week for going public about the arms situation, saying the Israeli leader's comments were unproductive and, more importantly, completely untrue, according to CNN. Well, that's CNN, propaganda operation for the government. It's untrue. Well, then give Tom Cotton the information he's requesting, and we'll see if it's untrue. It's not untrue. The Israelis know what's been ordered, and they know if they've gotten it or not. And this is Joe Biden buckling to the Islamists in his party as he's buckled to the Islamists in his party in the streets. Now, I've told you this man is an anti-Semite. I've told you this man, his administration is filled with anti-Semites, just like Franklin Roosevelt and his administration. They talk a good game. They fool a lot of Jews, but they are what they are. But I want you, all Americans, to know that it's Biden and Blinken and Pierre whatever and all the rest of them who are lying to you, the American people, and you can expect more of it during the debate. They are lying to you. They are slow-walking this stuff if they ever deliver it at all. We don't know what he's talking about. They know everything that's being done. It's like the letter from the 51 spooks. That is, former intel types. The Biden campaign drafted the letter, got the signatures, handed it to the media. It comes up in the second debate. He denies it, says it's Russian disinformation, points to the letter, points to the fact that over 50 former intelligence and national security officials, including 4 or 5 former CIA directors, he said, of both parties, said it's Russian disinformation. When they planted it, and they knew it wasn't Russian disinformation. They're doing the same thing to Netanyahu and the state of Israel and the people of Israel. Same damn thing. And this Tom Cotton, he really is a prince. He's a gem. He's on that committee. He knows exactly what's going on. We'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Folks, the war on our justice system, the vicious assault on President Trump, has sent our nation into uncharted waters. And trust me when I say things are going to get worse before they get better. I truly believe that. The political turmoil and uncertainty that lie ahead could have severe consequences for our economy and financial markets. But in times of crisis, there's always opportunity. And right now, I see that opportunity in diversification with gold and silver. As these tensions rise and the dollar's future becomes increasingly uncertain, gold has the potential to go even higher. That's why I trust Advantage Gold. They're experts at helping Americans take steps to help safeguard their wealth with precious metals. Call them right now. 800-900-8000. Don't wait. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit, plus a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. The future may be unpredictable, but your financial security doesn't have to be. So call Advantage Gold right now. 800-900-8000. There's no risk. There's no pressure. That's 800-900-8000. Get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers today. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. Now, we only have a few minutes here to the bottom of the hour, but over at the tablet, like the Free Beacon, an outstanding source for real news, not Axios with that clown Barack Rabin, who is a mouthpiece against his own country for Biden and Blinken. And when we come back, I'll discuss this. Michael Duran, who is who's an expert on the Middle East, and no, he's not Jewish, but he is a good man, and I've met him. He calls it Biden's Italian strike, the ongoing U.S. policy of slow-walking munition deliveries to Israel, and it isn't about Rafah. Let me start it, but we'll continue it after the break. But again, this is how Biden conducts himself. He wants to put Trump in prison. He wants to overthrow Netanyahu. He wants Iran to survive. He wants Iran to get nukes in a perverse view of keeping a balance of power in the Middle East. And this man, I don't care what they pump him up with during the debate. I don't even care what happens at the friggin' debate. He must be defeated. Must be defeated. No sooner had Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu accused the Biden administration on Tuesday of withholding arms shipments for Israel than American officials depicted him as delusional. Quote, "We don't know what he's talking about," White House Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre explained to reporters. Yes, she said, the Biden administration is withholding one single shipment of 2,000-pound bombs out of fear that they might be used in densely populated Gaza. But, quote, there are no other pauses or holds in place. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, speaking in Europe after having met with Netanyahu in Israel, repeated the claims of Jean-Pierre almost verbatim. Besides the 2,000-pound bombs, he explained, everything else is moving as it normally would move. But this assertion of normalcy is easily refuted. Last month, Politico reported that an order by Israel for joint direct attack munitions, that is a converter kit that turns dumb bombs into smart bombs, and that is to try and minimize civilian casualties, came up for license in December 23, and the administration has been sitting on it ever since. That's a quote from Politico. They call these JDAMs. The JDAMs, Politico further reported, are but one of multiple sales the State Department is reviewing. Now, those of you who follow me on my social sites, my platforms, I posted 4, 5, 6 articles indicating that they were sitting on arms and munitions and bragging about it. And radical Islamist Democrats in Congress were praising them but said they needed to go further. And now they say, oh, no, we're not sitting on anything. They're liars. When we come back, I really want to inform you about this. Finish this. You're not going to hear it anywhere else. There's only 2 sources right now, Tom Cotton and Tablet, and that is Free Beacon with Tom Cotton. But I want to further explain to you exactly how Biden and Blinken conduct themselves. They're loathsome. My fellow Americans, the phony conviction of Donald Trump has sent a clear message. Our country is in deep trouble. Our rule of law is under attack, and the integrity of our elections may well be in jeopardy. In times of political chaos like this, it's crucial to protect your wealth and secure your financial future. That's where my good friends at Advantage Gold come in. Please call them now. 800-900-8000. Get their free 2024 gold and silver kit to help protect your money against times like these with physical precious metals. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. No one can predict the future, but you can prepare for it. Call Advantage Gold today. 800-900-8000. Get your free gold and silver kit right now. Plus, Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers today. 800-900-8000. Give it a try. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professionals.
Mark Levin, the conscience of conservatism. Call Mark now at 877-381-3811.
All right, let's finish what we began here. The point is the Biden administration is lying to the American people. It funds Iran, it funds Hamas and Hezbollah and the PLO directly and indirectly, which in turn are providing support to Russia and China and North Korea. Biden is literally funding and therefore supplying oil and arms to the axis that is trying to destroy us, and it is organizing itself to do exactly that. Now, Tom Cotton wrote a letter today. He's a member of the Armed Services Committee, demanding that the Biden administration provide a detailed list of what's in the pipeline and where it is in the pipeline, explaining in the letter for the whole world that when a president of the United States does not treat the provision of weapons and ammunition as an emergency, it gets bogged down in a massive bureaucracy. And so what Biden and Blinken did in January is they put the brakes on the delivery of these things to Israel. And so now they say, we don't know what Netanyahu is talking about. We haven't stopped anything. This is a very diabolical and evil administration. They lie to you and me constantly. During the debate, Biden will lie again. He'll lie again. And by the way, my opening statement, as well as the Speaker of the House, as well as Laura Trump, are on my Saturday Life, Liberty, and Levin. I strongly urge you to set your DVRs for 8 p.m. Eastern Time on Saturday and Sunday. Our Sunday show will have Peter Schweitzer, because I want to deal with Biden again, and Kayleigh McEnany. So these are killer shows, crucially important in the lead up to this debate, and I very much want you to participate. But let's pick it up with Michael Duran in this piece in Tablet called Biden's Italian Strike. President Biden and his team are asking us to believe that when they arbitrarily place an arms shipment bound for Israel under review, quote unquote, they're following routine procedures rather than denying weapons to Israel. Europeans call the tactic of slowing or stopping work by meticulously adhering to rules and regulations as an Italian strike. It's hard to imagine a legal and bureaucratic process that invites this tactic more readily than American foreign military sales. The laws and policies governing sales require defense industries, the State Department, the Defense Department, and Congress, all to work closely with one another. If you ask representatives of any allied country about their experiences of their foreign military sales machinery, for the next 2 hours, they'll tell you tales of bureaucratic absurdity worthy of Kafka. The process is so convoluted that President Biden can place a transaction on hold simply by leaving it to rot in an interagency labyrinth of mandated reviews, verifications, and notifications. And that's what he's done. Nevertheless, when Biden deems a transaction to be a national security priority, he has the power to free it from the labyrinth. His office has the authority to force cooperation on the Departments of State and Defense, and of course, who runs the Department of State? Blinken. Blinken, who's a saboteur when it comes to Israel and the United States, as well as to mediate between the executive and legislative branches. Israel, of course, is popular on Capitol Hill. Legislators, therefore, will place no obstacles in the way of delivering weapons to it in a timely fashion. During this war, however, Congress has yet to find a trusted interlocutor in the White House. Quote, the administration is very much trying to keep Congress in the dark on a lot of their decision-making, an aide on Capitol Hill told Politico. The beauty of the so-called Italian strike is that it offers its leaders plausible deniability. Some military sales to Israel have proceeded without delay. Some have slowed but not stopped. Still others have been halted altogether. Transactions that were once stopped have started again. Biden and his team point to restarting of stalled initiatives as proof of non-interference by the White House. Each new instance of stoppage that comes to light, they arbitrate to this or that regulation. They attribute to, rather. As Netanyahu and his defenders complain, the administration depicts them as delusional. This gaslighting has successfully hidden the true nature of Biden's policy from the public eye. To be sure, some press outlets like Politico have poked holes in the administration's cover story, but they have failed to recognize the Italian strike for what it is, namely a coherent policy hiding behind the appearance of incoherence. Even while treating some of the details of the cover story with skepticism, the press has almost uniformly accepted the general framing of the administration, which presents the disagreements between Washington and Jerusalem as a fight over Rafah campaign and how best to prevent civilian deaths. And I blame Thomas Friedman. I blame this guy, Barak Rabin. They are propagandists for what's taking place here. Quote, civilians have been killed in Gaza as a consequence of those bombs and other ways in which they go after population centers, which was a disgrace when Biden told CNN's Erin Burnett. He said this to her in early May, referring to 2,000-pound bombs. I made it clear that if the Israelis go into Rafah, I'm not supplying the weapons that have been used historically to deal with the cities, but a close examination of the timeline reveals that the Italian strike began no later than last December, many months before the fight over Israel's Rafah campaign had even begun. What accounts for the early application of the pressure? Well, Tom Cotton says it's pressure from the Hamas wing of the Democrat Party. Michael Duran writes, for some clues to the answer, we might look to the Israeli delegation headed by the Director General of Israel's Defense Military, Major General Eyal Zamir, who traveled quietly to Washington in January to meet top administration officials and executives of defense industries. The trip received very little press coverage. Only the Israelis' news outlet Walla reported on the trip, and the story was lost amidst the dramatic news from Gaza. Zamir, Walla reported, had two main goals: to shorten the time it takes to produce and supply weapons for the IDF, and to increase the scope of the aid. In other words, Zamir came shopping for more weapons, more kinds of weapons, and for faster delivery of the weapons. The Americans responded by calling the Italian strike. The Biden team, according to Walla, disappointed Zamir and sent him away, saying, quote, they would study the issue, but that no answer would be given before the American elections, so as not to allow political considerations to influence the administration's decisions, unquote. The rationale was transparently bogus, but the message was clear enough. The Biden administration intended to keep the Israelis on a short leash. Why? The Americans were undoubtedly seeking to counter the thinking that had brought the Israeli delegation to Washington in the first place. General Zamir made clear to the Biden team that he had come shopping not for weapons to prosecute war in Gaza, but out of concerns, according to Walla's report, about the ongoing tensions with Hezbollah along the northern border and with other Iranian proxy forces across the Middle East. Hezbollah represents the most formidable direct military threat that Israel faces right now. A full-scale conflict with it will burn up an enormous amount of equipment and ammunition in a very short period, and it risks drawing Iran more directly into the war. The Israelis came to Washington to stock up, to be ready for the conflict should it erupt. The Americans, by contrast, seeks to restrain them. The purpose of the Italian strike is to force the Israeli into dependence on the United States, to deny them the ability to make long-term plans, namely plans regarding Hezbollah and Iran. So let me just add, Iran's going to get their nuclear weapon. We're not going to do anything, and Israel won't be able to do anything. Now think about that, America. That's why I read you these things, because they have consequences for here, right here in the United States of America. And Biden and Blinken are lying to us. Their spokespeople at the White House and the State Department and elsewhere, they are lying to us. The media are lying to us. Barack Ravid, Thomas Friedman, and their ilk. The extent that the administration even admits it's withholding arms, it justifies its actions by expressing concern over civilian deaths in Gaza. The Biden administration sees a gauzy humanitarianism as a defensible explanation before the American public for its policy of restraining Israel. Now, Israel's taking hundreds of sophisticated missiles from Hezbollah every single day. Now, imagine if that was happening to us from Canada. And imagine, as Richard Goldberg said to us yesterday on the radio, that we had to clear out all the states on the border with Canada, and then they start shooting missiles further into the interior of the United States, and then we have to start clearing out other states, Kentucky, Illinois, Indiana, and that's what Israel's having to do. And Biden and Blinken are telling them to stand down while they're funding Iran. Almost all press outlets in the United States depicted Netanyahu's protest over the withholding of weapons as the latest move in the fight over Rafah. But his video statement referenced Iran, not Gaza. Quote, Israel, America's closest ally, he said, is fighting for its life, fighting against Iran and our common enemies, unquote. The administration has little hope that the American people will understand why it's preventing Israel from defending itself against attacks from Hezbollah and Iran. Publicly, therefore, it has drawn the line in the sand in Rafah and screamed about civilian deaths. Privately, it has its eyes locked like a laser on the Lebanese-Israeli border. If a full-scale war kicks off in the north, the Obama-Biden policy of achieving equilibrium in the Middle East by integrating Iran and its proxies into the regional order comes crashing down. Comes crashing down. They don't care about the lives of Americans in this country with the open border on the south and now the northern border, with the fentanyl, with the Venezuelan gangs, with the MS-13 gangs. They don't give a damn about the Israeli lives, and honestly, they don't give a damn about the Palestinian lives. They use it as cover. As this piece in the tablet by Michael Duran points out, I've posted this piece. I've posted the Free Beacon piece where a great patriot, Tom Cotton, has also pulled the sheets from what's taking place. Biden and Blinken are going to ensure that Iran gets a nuclear weapon. Biden and Blinken are going to ensure that as more Israeli citizens and IDF soldiers die. Biden and Blinken do not want Israel to win. They want to chop up Israel. They want to give 30% of it to the Palestinians because Biden is an anti-Semite and Blinken is a Marxist. He's a Soros Marxist. Now you know the whole story. The whole story. And when Iran gets a nuclear weapon, we, right here in the continental United States, not to mention Alaska and Hawaii and our territories, will be in grave, grave, grave danger. When Biden leaves, I pray to God on January 20th, right before the big hand hits noon, the damage this man will have done is incalculable. And so he will lie during this debate. He will attack during this debate. The media will give him coverage. The bar will be very low. If he doesn't throw up on his loafers, we'll be told he had a fantastic night. All these lies, all these fake videos, what you see is not what you get. Propaganda will swing, full swing. Full swing. This is what we're up against. It's called tyranny. The propaganda comes straight out of the irony, the KGB propaganda book. That's what they're doing to us. That's what they're doing to the country. They're withholding weapons from Israel. Israel is losing the ability to defend itself. Iran has never been stronger. Hezbollah has never been stronger. That's what's going on. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
The war against Donald Trump, which is ongoing, has turned our legal and political system into a nightmare. With the 2024 elections on the horizon, we could be facing a period of unprecedented instability and uncertainty. But you can protect and grow your wealth by investing in gold and silver. Precious metals have always served as a safe haven during times of political and economic turmoil. And with the expert guidance of my good friends at Advantage Gold, you can navigate this insane climate with confidence. Call Advantage Gold right now, 800-900-8000. They'll send you a free 2024 gold and silver kit that tells you how to help keep your money safe when things are bad. Plus, tell them I sent you, and they'll give you a special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 if you qualify. Call Advantage Gold, 800-900-8000. Get your special Mark Levin discount worth up to $1,300 for qualified customers. That's 800-900-8000. Performance may vary. You should always consult your financial and tax professional. I'm so glad you're out there, folks. I can pass this information on to as many people as possible, and then you can pass it on as well. And that's why I think talk radio, this show, well, they're so important. We call this Radio Free America, right here on the Mark Levin Show. That's what it is, Radio Free America. And let me end this hour this way, on a very sad note. The New York Post. U.S. officials believe that as few as 50 of the 116 hostages held by Hamas remain alive. These butchers, these monsters, these non-humans, they take these people hostage. They brutalize them, torture them, rape them, and murder them. What would we do, Mr. Producer? Wouldn't we want to pull their hearts out through their nose? The assessment, based in part on Israeli intelligence, indicated that 66 of the remaining hostages are now dead. Mediators in the hostage talks and a U.S. official told the Wall Street Journal. Israel previously estimated 41 remaining hostages were no longer alive, while Hamas has insisted it doesn't know how many hostages are dead or alive. I think we should be extremely worried, said Hagi Levin, the head of the medical team for the Hostages and Missing Families Forum. Seems like every week more hostages are dying or getting in danger or very sick. And I will add, while Biden and Blinken are withholding weapons from Israel. I despise these bastards. Despise them. I can't imagine another 4 years of them. I'll be right back. This segment of the podcast is exclusively sponsored by Pure Talk. Pure Talk offers great coverage and can save your family money on your wireless bill every single month. Go to puretalk.com to find the plan that's right for you. Thank you again for listening, and thank you so much for this sponsorship, Pure Talk.
He's here. He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811, 877-381-3811. All right. I got another expose to share with you that you're unfamiliar with, because I only became familiar with it about an hour ago. And this is from our friends at Blaze Media, of which I'm obviously a founder. A piece written by Leon Wolf. They do tremendous work over there. They do a lot of research. And just a fabulous team, but that's not why I'm doing this. They put a lot of excellent work. But this one's different. It's about Anthony Fauci. And despite all the hearings and so forth, I want to give you information that even Congress doesn't know yet, but it will know now. Many people, they write, have seen Anthony Fauci as a threat since 2020. Dr. Richard Ebright, spelled like it sounds, Dr. Richard Ebright, has been aware since 2001. Well, that got my attention. The evidence continues to mount that the most likely source of the outbreak of SARS-CoV-2, the virus that causes COVID-19, was not a wet market, as was originally claimed. The evidence likewise continues to mount that the research invoked in the leak was likely gain-of-function research that was funded, at least in part, with our own tax dollars. Now, the truth of the matter is that we had a gentleman on, his name was Mr. Wade, was it not, Mr. Producer? Nicholas Wade, who was the editor in years past of the science page for the New York Times, of all places. And we had him on Life, Liberty, and Levin, and on this radio program where nobody else would bring him on, where he wrote the definitive piece laying out what he believed had taken place. Couldn't prove it, but it was a powerful piece. That led to Rand Paul, that led to others taking a much closer look at this, and they should have, and I'm glad they did. But it was Nicholas Wade. He's no conservative, he's just a serious individual, he's retired, for the most part, who took a look at it and wrote about it and put his neck on the line. And, of course, we gave it the national attention that it deserved. Well, now I'm giving it further national attention that it deserves from this Blaze piece by Leon Wolf. While much of the world has only recently woken up to this reality, that is, the lab, one man, Dr. Richard Ebert, has been warning us for 20 years that this day was coming. For 20 years, his warnings have largely been ignored, primarily thanks to Dr. Anthony Fauci. To most Americans, even those who follow the news closely, Fauci was helicoptered into their consciousness out of a total obscurity in early 2020, when he became the public face of the government's pandemic response. In many ways, though, Fauci could have been yanked out of central casting to play the role of television family doctor for the whole country, an image he carefully cultivated to project an air of competence and confidence to a shaken nation. What most people don't know, though, was that for years Fauci had been dogged by a very different sort of doctor, a researcher from Rutgers University who shunned the camera and preferred to keep his opinions in print. A man who made it clear with his appearance and his mannerisms that he never wanted to be an activist. A registered Democrat who supported Biden to the point of putting a Biden sign in his front yard. Dr. Ebright had always been convinced of one simple thing that he viewed to be above the petty fray of partisan politics. The government should not be spending our tax dollars to fund dangerous research on making viruses more deadly. For years, Dr. Ebert and Fauci carried out a silent war, waged in print, visible mostly only to members of the small community of research scientists who conduct serious chemical and biological research. Over and over again, the same refrain played out. Ebert warned the public that this research was making the public less safe, and Fauci insisted it was making the public more safe. As we know now, Ebert was almost certainly right. But it has taken 4 years, thanks to the concerted efforts, of Fauci and his team, for the public to slowly come around to that realization. But to understand where we are, it is first necessary to understand how we got here. Countless ink, both real and digital, has been spent examining Fauci's every move taken since those fateful years in 2020. Relatively little has been spent examining Fauci's actions prior to 2020. Those actions, which are still largely shrouded in obscurity, may turn out to have been far more consequential than anything Fauci has done since. That is, since he first appeared at the infamous press conference with former President Trump. You see, for the last 2 decades, Fauci's been by far the most important defender of what might be fairly called a bioweapons research program that the public now knows, albeit imperfectly, as gain-of-function research. The U.S. government started the ball rolling on this dangerous research in the waning days of 2001. As you may recall, the al-Qaeda attacks of 9/11 were followed almost immediately by a series of high-profile anthrax attacks, which prominent individuals in the U.S. were mailed envelopes with suspicious white powder that later tested positive for anthrax. The Bush administration, led by then Vice President Dick Cheney, that would be Liz Cheney's father, became convinced that the government's readiness to face bioweapons threats was weak and responded by prevailing upon Congress to pass a massive funding increase to research on both anthrax and new, quote-unquote, designer viruses that did not yet exist but might potentially be created by enemies of the United States. Ebright told Blaze News, Cheney, even before the anthrax mailings, felt the U.S. biodefense posture was weak. Was convinced that it could only be improved by carrying out an aggressive and assertive program of biodefense research that would include components that walked right up to the red line and arguably crossed the red line set by the Biological Weapons Convention, he said. According to Ebright, Cheney became deeply frustrated that the Department of Defense maintained a Biological Weapons Convention compliance office that reviewed every research proposal with bioweapons agencies by the Department of Defense. This Biological Weapons Compliance Office repeatedly thwarted dangerous research projects, and Cheney wanted to see come to fruition. And so Cheney set out in 2003 to find an agency that would not have a Biological Weapons Conventions Compliance Office that could take the lead and carry out these dangerous and legally questionable projects. I didn't know any of this. Did you, Mr. Producer? Ebert said he found one agency and one person willing to take that role, and the agency was the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases. And he found Anthony Fauci. And the resources that had been part of the Department of Defense moved almost in toto to Fauci's agency. And the authority for all U.S. biodefense research went to the new biodefense research czar, Anthony Fauci, who then received a very large salary increase, making him the highest compensated government employee, Ebright said. Now, Fauci was an enthusiastic and frequent champion of the program under his supervision. In NIH press releases dating back to its inception, Fauci regularly asked Congress for more money for the program and defended diverting millions of dollars from other programs. Not all scientists, however, were convinced, as even the NIH concedes the decision to divert money from other programs infuriated many in the scientific community, not only because the money was needed elsewhere, but also because the money was being hastily thrown at many scientists who had little or no experience researching priority pathogens. Dr. Ebert, for his part, raised yet another issue. He told Blaze News, quote, this drove a massive increase in the number of institutions and individuals with access to bioweapons agents. This increased rather than decreased the risk of release of those agents. Ebert told everyone who would listen that it was a mistake to continue expanding funding that had the effect of increasing the number of people who handled dangerous pathogens, a refrain that made him unpopular both with the Bush administration and within the halls of Fauci's agency. In fact, Ebert was such a persistent antagonist to the Bush administration's bioresearch program that the New York Times ran a positive profile on him in 2004 titled, I Beg to Differ in a Lonely Stand, a scientist's take on national security dogma. And in the piece, Dr. Ebert specifically noted that the substantial majority of persons who had conducted germ attacks in recent history were not terrorists, but were rather scientists who had gained access to the pathogens as part of their work. Ebright's concern would be wholly vindicated when the perpetrator of the anthrax attacks was discovered to be a biodefense researcher at Fort Detrick who had authorized access to the anthrax samples. But it would not be the last time Ebright's warnings in that 2004 article would prove to be prophetic. Among other objections raised by Ebright, to the proliferation of laboratories doing research on dangerous pathogens, He specifically warned that the laboratories, quote, could leak, unquote, that one day a dangerous pathogen could accidentally escape from one of these labs and cause havoc. Fauci and the NIH, meanwhile, were not listening to Ebright or anyone else's objections. Scientific community as a whole was growing sufficiently concerned that the National Academy of Sciences established a committee to review research that was being done on so-called dual-use pathogens that had potential civilian use but also potential bioweapon use. The committee issued a report in 2004 that identified 7 ongoing studies that concern and recommended stringent federal oversight of these projects. These experiments today would be called gain-of-function research, but were then known as dual-use research of concern. The stringent federal oversight never materialized. But Ebright and fellow skeptics finally began to gain traction both with the public and with the government when Fauci's organization and the CDC finally let their hubris get the better of them and bragged to the world that they had done something that imperiled the future of mankind. In October 2005, scientists from the CDC and Fauci's organization proudly announced that they had reconstituted the H1N1 influenza virus, the same flu that was estimated to have killed 1% of the world's population in 1918. Adjusted to today's population, the death figures might well have topped 80 million. These are like quacks, mad scientists, no, Mr. Medusa? Worse, because H1N1 has not been circulating in decades, the current world population has absolutely no immunity to this deadly strain of flu, meaning that it might well have been much more deadly in 2005 than it was in 1918. Now, the scientists responsible for the research, no doubt impressed by their own cleverness, bragged that they had reconstituted the virus by, in part, examining tissue samples from flu victims who were frozen in the tundra of Alaska. Fauci himself vouched for the need for the research and defended its necessity to explain why anyone would knowingly reconstitute a deadly virus thought to have perished from the earth. Fauci claimed the research was necessary to improve the public health community's response to the spread of H5N1 avian flu in Asia. According to Fauci, quote, the new studies could have an immediate impact by helping scientists focus on detecting changes in the evolving H5N1 virus that might make widespread transmission among humans more likely. Nobody's known about this. But for this expose now by Dr. Ebright in Blaze Media, nobody's heard of this before. But Ebright disagreed. As noted in Nature article at the time, Ebright blasted Fauci and the CDC for having, quote, constructed and provided procedures for others to construct a virus that represents the most, perhaps, effective bioweapons agent now known. Now, these days, almost all the discussion about Fauci is viewed exclusively through a partisan lens. If you criticize Fauci, you must be a Republican and probably one of those crazy right-wingers to boot. If you support Fauci, you must be a Democrat. To those who have watched Fauci's career closely, the remarkable phenomenon is how thoroughly partisan perception of Fauci flipped, suddenly and instantaneously in the early days of the pandemic. Prior to 2020, Fauci was the subject of frequent and strident criticism from many of the liberal institutions that have since ruled any criticism of his actions out of bounds. In fact, if anything, Fauci, who was first appointed to his post during the Reagan administration, was often seen as a creature of the Bush-Cheney administration and thus was extremely fair game for criticism by both Democrats and the media. Ebright himself fits solidly in this camp. During Tuesday's hearing before the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee, he flatly stated, I'm a registered Democrat. I voted for Biden. I had a Biden sign on my lawn. In fact, if anything, prior to February 2020, Fauci was probably more well-liked to the extent that he was known at all among Republicans than Democrats. But then in an instant, the partisan impressions of Fauci instantly turned a complete 180. Ebright watched it happen on live TV. When he had the good fortune to share screen with Trump and facepalm Trump when Trump was making a statement, he became a progressive icon and progressive saint, Ebright noted. But back in 2005, as the public was starting to sour on the Iraq War and on the Bush administration's conduct of the war on terror in general, Fauci and his research We're getting the attention of many critics, particularly on the left, and thus the New York Times, which has largely forgotten that it's possible to criticize Fauci, ran an unflattering profile on this research titled, Why Revive a Deadly Flu Virus? Now, the article goes on. It's extraordinarily thorough. And in many areas, your jaw will hit the ground. As much as I love doing this on radio, I can't spend the rest of the hour reading the rest of the article. But we have linked to it on all my platforms, and I encourage you to read it. I sent it to an individual I know to pass it on to Senator Paul, because I have no connection with Senator Paul. And anybody else who thinks they should look at it or hears me, you need to look at this article. And it's the first one in a series. But it goes all the way back and explains how this happened. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. I've got a ton. We're going to get to it. We'll get right back to it after the bottom. Everybody, I admit I do my show differently. When we come back, the war on Judge Aileen Cannon in Florida continues. The war on the Supreme Court justices, the constitutionalists, continues. We'll be right back. Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need.
Mark Levin, radio's principal patriot. Call in now at 877-381-3811.
America's once great cities. San Francisco, Chicago, New York, Atlanta, Washington, D.C. They used to represent all that was great with America. Now, like our nation, anarchy rules the day. With open borders comes an open invitation for the worst to join their ranks. Rampant homelessness, lawlessness, drugs, and fentanyl. It's literally policy of the radical left, pushed by those who seek to destroy America from within. Who's paying for this radical transformation of America? Your children, robbed of a quality education education, job opportunities. Think it's going to stay in just America's cities?
Violent crime in the suburbs.
Murders, auto theft, car break-ins.
Now it's happening in the burbs, too.
Think again.
It's a great ad by the Trump people. So true, isn't it? One of the things I want to get to here is a piece in the Federalist. And then I want to get to what they're trying to do to this judge, intimidator. I've never seen anything like it in my life, quite frankly. And Eddie Scary over there at the Federalist, here's how the media are lying right now. CNN's tools for a so-called civilized debate. He says this semi-regular feature is usually about some deceitful narrative the propaganda news media are pushing in recent days, but there's a high-stakes presidential debate next week, and it's better that we use this installment to anticipate what will happen. CNN, the debate's host network, said Saturday that both President Biden and former President Trump had agreed to the terms of participating, but the announcement included this alarming detail, quote, as in the past, the moderators will use all tools at their disposal to enforce timing and ensure a civilized discussion, unquote. Well, it was already the case that the candidates will have their mics muted during the opposing candidates' time, eliminating interruptions of one another. So what other tools will remain at the disposal of CNN's miserable choice for moderators, Jake Tapper and Dana Bash, so that they might, quote, enforce timing and more insidiously ensure a civilized discussion? The way things are supposed to happen is the moderators ask questions and allow the candidates equal time to answer. Even with the new stipulation that a mic is turned down when it's outside of a candidate's allotted time, the basic concept shouldn't change. But that's surely not how this is going to work. By, quote-unquote, enforcing timing and, quote, ensuring a civilized discussion, unquote, what CNN means is that Tapper, Bash, and the countless producers in their earpieces will cut off both Trump and Biden at their discretion, though for sharply different reasons. Trump will have his audio killed because his plan is undeniably to lay into CNN and the media at large just as much as it is to flay Biden's god-awful presidency. Both are deserving of it, but Tapper and Bash are in control and aren't going to just bend over and take it. These so-called tools at their disposal in that event will be for the pair to drop Trump's feed and insert their own niggling, irksome commentary about the former president veering off topic or failing to be civilized. Biden, by contrast, will be saved by the mute. Rewatch the presidential debates of 2020, and it's exceedingly obvious Trump's frantic and frequent interjections during Biden's time to speak hurt their former president. The more Biden is allowed to speak, the more unseemly his performance. Whether he's musing about his son or his fabricated biography or his indefensible record, he meanders each time into incoherence, leaving his audience as confounded as concerned. The purpose of cutting Biden's mic will serve to mitigate that handicap. As ever on the media's turf, the deck is stacked against Trump. A live audience, invariably a Trump asset, won't be present. He could have insisted that there be no interruptions or live fact checks, aka unsolicited opinions, by moderators. But there's no indication he did, and now CNN is essentially admitting it reserves the right for Tapper and Bash to act up as they please. The lie hasn't happened yet, but we already know what it is. It's that Tapper and CNN will do everything they can to shield Biden and kneecap Trump. Excusing the blatant election interference is simply an honest attempt to, quote, enforce timing and ensure a civilized discussion. Yeah, right. So they've already set it up to try and kneecap Trump, but there's no question about that. I agree. Now let's move on. This is from the New York Times. The New York Times, as you know, is poisonous, cancerous, has supported genocidal mass murders, has covered up the Holocaust, and really shouldn't be in business if we actually believe in an honest press, because they're the opposite. Now, that said, here's the hit by Charlie Savage and Alan Fuhrer. Fuhrer, and Savage. Shortly after Judge Aileen Cannon drew the assignment, they hate this woman because she's actually a real judge. They never said anything about Mershon, did they? No. Or Chutkin, or whatever the hell her name is. She's a disaster. Shortly after Judge Aileen Cannon drew the assignment in June 2023 to oversee former President Trump's classified documents case. Ready? Begins right in the first sentence. Two more experienced colleagues on the federal bench in Florida urged her to pass it up and hand it off to another jurist, according to two people briefed on the conversations. So now the judges are leaking. It's in the first sentence. The judges who approached Judge Cannon, including the chief judge in the Southern District of Florida, Cecilia M. Altonaga, each asked her to consider whether it would be better if she were to decline the high-profile case, allowing to go to another judge, the two people said. But Judge Cannon, who was appointed by Mr. Trump, they always do this. The judges appointed by Trump. Tell me which judges were appointed by Biden. They don't tell you. Which judges were appointed by Obama. They don't tell you. I tell you. But look at Merchan. They didn't care. This guy was conflicted up the wazoo, out of his ears, through his nose, through his genitalia. This guy was oozing conflict, and that was okay. But Judge Cannon was appointed by Trump, as hundreds of other judges were, so she can't be trusted, America. Don't you get it? But Judge Cannon, who was appointed by Mr. Trump, wanted to keep the case and refused the judges' entreaties. Her assignment drew attention because she has scant trial experience and had previously shown unusual favor to Mr. Trump. Look at this sleaze operation. By intervening in a way that helped him in the criminal investigation that led to his indictment, only to be reversed in a sharply critical rebuke by a conservative appeals court panel. Okay, I'm not going to keep doing this, just to let you know what's going on. Ever hear William O. Douglas? He was, I think, the longest-serving justice in history. If he wasn't the first, he was the second. Franklin Roosevelt appointed him because he was a hack, an ideological compatriot. He was a lawyer in a federal agency, and he appointed him to the Supreme Court. He didn't have an experience doing a damn thing. But it didn't matter. Kamala Harris doesn't have experience to be vice president of the United States, but it didn't matter. Barack Obama was a senator, for 2 years or something, Mr. Producer? He didn't have a background or experience to be president, but he was. And yet this judge, from a truly legal perspective, has done a fantastic job because they're throwing all these constitutional issues at her. Jack Smith is. Because she's not rolling over and playing Merchan, a hack, a fraud, and a freak and a fool. They attack her. Notice they attack Judge Cannon. They attack Justice Alito. They attack Justice Thomas. They brutalize Kavanaugh. Now they're building up Barrett because they're hoping she'll be the next Blackman or Souter, and she may well be. This is how the media play. This is how they play when it comes to Israel. This is how they play when it comes to Trump. They're sleazy. They're sleazy. Let's do this a little bit because there's something interesting here I just noticed. The extraordinary and previously undisclosed effort by Judge Cannon's colleagues to persuade her to step aside. Notice it's always time to do maximum character assassination damage. Adds another dimension to the increasing criticism of how she has gone on to handle the case. She's broken, according to lawyers who operate there, with a general practice of federal judges in the Southern District of delegating some pre-motions to a magistrate. Excuse me. These cases are not delegated to a magistrate. This isn't your in-the-door case. This is high-level stuff. Like Judge Susan Weber Wright, who was the chief judge of the district in Arkansas, who flew to Washington, D.C. to oversee the deposition of Bill Clinton. Judges don't normally do that either. But she saw that this case was different, just as the Trump case is different. You jerks. Well, he's subordinate to her. Judge Bruce Reinhardt is an older and much more experienced jurist. He's a magistrate. He's not a judge. Why is the New York Times even going here? To sleaze her up, that's why. While he's subordinate to her, Judge Reinhardt is an older and much more experienced jurist. In 2022, he was the one who signed off on an FBI warrant. Well, maybe that's why. Mr. Trump's club and residence in Florida for highly sensitive government files. Since then, Judge Cannon has exhibited hostility to prosecutors. Look at this. Look at this. Handled pre-motion slowly and indefinitely postponed the trial, declining to set a date for it to begin, even though both the prosecution and the defense have told her they could be ready to start this summer. But she wants a fair hearing on the issues. Can't have that. Why are they in such a rush? We know why. Mr. Trump's lawyers have also urged her to delay any trial until after the election. Well, she's appointed by Trump. What do you expect? Against that backdrop, where are the early efforts by her colleague on the bench to persuade her to step aside, and the significance of her decision not to is spread among other federal judges and people who know them? Got that, Mr. Medusa? It is routine for novice judges to look to more experienced jurists for informal advice on mentoring as they learn to perform their new roles, and this is just sick. There's nothing here, of course. It's just sick. They've created nothing, but they want you to think that this woman is an idiot. They want you to think that she's in the tank. They want you to think all those things, and they want her to be looking over her shoulder, to be reading the New York Times, to be watching MSNBC and CNN, and the grifters, slip and fall lawyers, ambulance chasers, the sleazy, phony Democrat Party journalists in this media, the completely disreputable New York Times. So there she is, a judge, and she opens the newspaper, and she's being smeared. Now, the way not to be smeared is to step in a line, like John Roberts or Amy Coney Barrett. This is the way it works. Or you'll be given the Bob Bork, Clarence Thomas, Sam Alito treatment. And now Judge Cannon treatment. Tell us, New York Times, what kind of a student was Cannon? Top of the class. What kind of law school did she go to? One of the best. Was she a clerk? Yes. Was she in law review? Yes. Sounds pretty smart to me. They're not smart enough for the lazy, low IQ morons at the New York Slimes, like Charlie Savage. And the other guy, what was his name? I don't know. Doesn't matter. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Did you know one of the largest U.S. flags in the state of Georgia stands proudly in Pure Talk's parking lot? To honor that flag, Pure Talk is supporting America's Warrior Partnership in their mission to prevent veteran suicide. For our servicemen and women, the transition to civilian life can be very difficult, especially now. Access to housing, employment, and even their earned VA benefits can be very difficult. That's where America Warriors Partnership steps in by providing real support where and when our vets need it most. And you can help this noble cause when you switch to Pure Talk's 5G service and support this great charity. Through Flag Day, they'll match every dollar donated up to $50,000. Choose a wireless company that shares your values and puts you on America's most dependable 5G network for just $20 a month. Go to puretalk.com/Levin. That's puretalk.com/LEVIN to make the switch. That's puretalk.com/Levin for superior cell phone service. That's half the price of Verizon, AT&T, or T-Mobile, and to help Pure Talk with vets in need. You know why this article in the New York Times showed up? Because tomorrow there's the big argument in Judge Cannon's courtroom on the question of whether the appointment of Jack Smith was constitutional. And among others, Landmark Legal Foundation is one of the parties making an oral argument there, as well as the lawyer for former Attorneys General Meese and McCasey. It's no small matter. And then, of course, the prosecution will be making their argument. It's a big deal. And if you actually read the briefs, it's pretty clear that his appointment is unconstitutional. So they're trying to intimidate Judge Cannon right now. And I would suggest to Judge Cannon, history will be the judge, not the New York Times. History has judged the New York Times as a sleazy, bloodthirsty organization that defended Stalin, they covered up the Holocaust, and installed Castro. Doesn't get much worse than that. So do not allow the reprobates, the miscreants, the malcontents who dress up as journalists there and do their hit job on you, Judge, to have an influence. History will judge you properly. And history will judge you based on what you write. And the scholarship is pretty damn clear that the Attorney General made an unconstitutional appointment. And as Landmark's brief says, he can appoint a U.S. attorney who's already been confirmed by the Senate or somebody else in the Department of Justice who's been confirmed by the Senate. But he can't drag some a-hole off the street or from The Hague and just give them the most enormous power of any prosecutor on the face of the earth. Doesn't work that way because the Senate is supposed to have a role. It's that simple. We have an appointments clause. Now, I don't expect the New York Slimes to understand it, but even if they do, I do expect them to lie and cheat and spin, because they are, after all, Democrats. Eric Holder was on MSLSD yesterday. I guess people go there to go in the green room for the donuts. They must have something good in there to nosh on, because nobody's watching that stupid network. In any event, he's threatening the Supreme Court, because the court's about to release very crucial opinions on a number of issues. Obstruction, immunity, and, don't forget, the monitoring, censorship of the Biden administration. I'll be back.
He's here. Now, broadcasting from the underground command post, deep in the bowels of a hidden bunker, somewhere under the brick and steel of a nondescript building, we've once again made contact with our leader, Mark Levin.
Hello, America. Mark Levin here. Our number, 877-381-3811. 877-381-3811. Eric Holder was on MSLSD yesterday. He feels very comfortable there, as he should. He's worried about the Supreme Court. So he's on with Nicole Wallace, who's probably, well, she's the lowest IQ of a large group of low IQ types on TV, I would say. In other words, to put it in plain parlance, a real dumbass. May I say that, Mr. Producer? And so there she is with Eric Holder. But he was a great attorney general, wasn't he, America? I have an idea. What's that, Eric? Why don't we arm the drug cartels, and that way we can trace the illegal weapons. Excuse me, you're giving them the weapons. And what did they do? They murdered a Border Patrol agent. Fast and Furious. But Eric Holder was the right-hand man of, shall I say, left-hand man of Barack Milhouse Benito Obama. Did everything Obama wanted and needed. Never stepped out of line. Much like Meritless Garland. Much like Meritless Garland. But here he is. He's back. Eric Holder. With Nicole Wallace. Cut 2. Go.
I want to ask you about the Supreme Court, and I want to ask you how you're thinking about this period where we are waiting for the extraordinary, for something that people told us we wouldn't have to worry about. We're waiting for the Supreme Court's opinion on immunity, and Trump has actually argued...
Whoa. What do you mean people said we wouldn't have to worry about? What are you talking about? You Nimrod? I have no idea. People said... What people? Well, people said it wouldn't be an issue. Now, the truth is, people did say that. Remember that, Mr. Producer? Oh, Trump doesn't have a shot. I was the only one, including among our friends, who said, wait a minute. Maybe Trump's arguing that immunity should be viewed in its purest sense. Maybe that won't hold up. But you can't just get rid of immunity after a president leaves office for his official actions, for his actions, period. Otherwise, there's really no such thing as presidential immunity. Otherwise, what will happen is what Biden is doing to Trump. Well, he's defending democracy, don't you know? So, MSLSD, the Constipated News Network, the New York Slimes, the Washington Compost, all their so-called experts, and others, former federal prosecutors who are now legal analysts on all the networks, they did disagree with me. Even friendly ones disagree with me. I said, well, they're wrong. Trump may not win 100%, but it's not about win, lose, or draw. It's about the Constitution, the power of the office of the president. There has to be immunity of some kind. And you have a case here in which I've made the point, the January 6th case, where a prosecutor who is unconstitutionally appointed has criminalized the electoral system. So now, fake electors, they used to be called a second slate of electors. It's happened before. Now they're fake and it's criminal. Oh, okay. Anyway, go ahead, Mr. Producer.
Court, and based on the questioning, has some receptive audience members to the idea that a president should be immune from prosecution. How are you thinking about this period?
No, shouldn't be immune. I'll tell you what, Nicole, if that is your real name, and I'll tell you what, Eric Holder, hold her, hold him, whatever. I'll tell you what, Eric, if you guys win this and Donald Trump becomes president, guess what? Joe Biden will be prosecuted, I believe. He'll be prosecuted for his violations of the Espionage Act, not when he was president, when he was a senator, private citizen, and vice president. He'll be prosecuted for selling state secrets for $8 million book deal to a publisher. I don't blame the publisher. I don't blame the ghostwriter. I blame the perpetrator. That would be Biden. He can be sued for a number of violations, including civilly, for what's going on the border, the ranchers who are harmed, the businesses that are harmed, people who have been abused, casualties down there's casualties. There's a border war going on. Families that have lost loved ones from fentanyl that can be traced coming across the border during the period of time where Biden had an open border and was violating federal immigration laws. Biden will be spending the rest of his life in courtrooms all over the country. But let's see what Eric Holder, or hold him, has to say. Go.
Predictions.
Well, I got to tell you this. I mean, anything less than a decision by the Supreme Court that says a president should be held to the laws just like any other American citizen should be. Anything other than that is absurd. The notion, for instance, that apparently some justices are fooling around with it. Well, if the president violated the criminal law but was doing so in his official capacity, there may be some basis to say that that's okay. We need to step back and think about that. Wait a minute. A president can violate the American
Yeah, like when Obama took out several American citizens. Can he be charged with that? No. He's doing that as part of his official duties. That's the point, dumbass. That's the point. And going forward, how will a president even know what a future administration is going to do to him or her? So it's not as Eric Holder says. I'll give you another example, Eric. You know, when you were arming drug cartels with weapons illegally in order to trace the weapons to the drug cartels, I don't know what genius hatched that. And there was a Border Patrol agent who was murdered with one of those guns, even though the statute of limitations has run. But, of course, that doesn't matter in New York, so you have to find a way to bring the case in New York. Nonetheless, Obama, theoretically, if the statute of limitations hadn't run, could be prosecuted. Not Obama, actually. You, Eric. You could be prosecuted. You jerk. You don't even understand. Go ahead.
If he or she is doing something in their official capacity. That is an absurd and dangerous conclusion.
Yes, but here's the problem. You have an attorney general who's going to look back with 20/20 vision and make that determination. So to act like you are, like it's really not a difficult issue at all, of course. If, in fact, that becomes the majority view on the Supreme Court, then Joe Biden better hire a whole bunch of lawyers, and he better hire them fast. Because if he's not reelected, God willing, or if he hangs on for a while and then they remove him under the 25th Amendment, which I think is part of their plan between us, he will be subject to prosecution. Oh, retribution. I'm not talking about retribution. I'm talking, you hear what Eric Holder just said? Did you hear what Eric Holder just said? I'm the one who disagrees with Eric Holder. Did you hear what Eric Holder just said? And Nicole Wallace? Oh, yes. Nicole Wallace is the Joseph Story of our time. Oh, yes. It's really simple, he says. President commits a crime while he's president. When he leaves office, well, then, of course, he'll be prosecuted. Therefore, Joe Biden should be prosecuted for his myriad willful violations of the Espionage Act when he wasn't president. Because the future president doesn't have to accept Mr. Hur's report that he's an imbecile and too old and the jury may not like it. So what? Who's ever heard of a defense like that one? He's an imbecile, but he's running for president. So he can't be prosecuted because he's an imbecile, but he can be president. Doesn't make any sense, does it? No, of course not. And the courts have held in Washington, D.C. that a president could be subjected to civil lawsuits because they want to take out Trump. They hate Trump. And so then that's the precedent. So people can bring civil lawsuits against Joe Biden once he leaves office. And by the way, against meritless Garland, too. It's open season now, folks. Open season. And I don't know why only they should be able to operate on open season and we roll over into a fetal position and somehow that's called retribution. No, it's called equal justice. Actually, it's just called equal because none of it's justice. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
Barbara Leaf. Ever hear Barbara Leaf? Do you know who she is? Of course not. She's the Assistant Secretary for the Bureau of Near East Affairs, the Department of State, a.k.a. the State of Confusion. She was at a hearing today with the great Ted Cruz. Our administration, this regime is so awful. Our enemies know how bad it is. And I'm gravely fearful that we're going to have a World War III, that we're going to have a draft. The left and the Democrats and some Republicans have pushed into this national security defense bill the drafting of women, girls. I'm so sick and tired of this, you have no idea. I'm sick and tired of it. No, we should not draft girls or women. Zero. No. I'm tired of this BS where we don't recognize differences between men and women. And let me tell you something that I'm sure will be controversial, but shouldn't be. It's the duty of a father, it's the duty of a husband, it's the duty of a boyfriend, it's the duty of a grandfather to protect the women in their lives. To protect the women in their lives. I would take a bullet for my wife and my daughter and my granddaughter and my stepdaughter and my niece. Period. Period. And we need more of that, not less of it. More of it, not less of it. And you see what these bastards do, these terrorists do to the women? Where did this come from, this idea that we should be drafting our women and putting them on the front lines of the military? Where the hell did that come from? The American people vote for this? No. No. Anyway, Barbara Leaf. Cut 9, Mr. Producer, go.
Does this administration, does President Biden support Israel in its commitment to utterly eliminate Hamas?
Of course.
Of course. Then why are you calling for an immediate ceasefire before they eliminate Hamas?
Israel has accepted that proposal.
No, they have not.
They have.
Is there a ceasefire that's happened?
Hamas has not yet fully accepted.
Is there a Israel most certainly has not. I'm aware the Biden administration has told the press that Israel has.
The Israeli leadership.
So I asked you a question. Do you support Israel's military objective of utterly eliminating Hamas? You said yes. And the next sentence you said, but they should cease fire right now and not eliminate Hamas.
No, I agree with the way that the president characterized it, Senator, on May 31st, which is to say that we agree with the objective that Hamas never again control the Gaza Strip or threaten Israel. That will not be achieved by military means alone.
So it's not no, we said their military objective was to defeat Hamas. So you just said it's impossible to defeat Hamas.
When you
first
right? posed the question, you said eliminate Hamas.
I said utterly eliminate Hamas. I didn't say over time, not over 1,000 years. I said defeat an enemy because they are murderers who murdered 1,200 people, who raped women and little girls.
It won't be done by military means alone.
Okay, so it is the position of this administration it is impossible by military means to defeat Hamas.
Yes, it is.
Unbelievable. Unbelievable. And who the hell is she? Who the hell is she? You know, Israel is a democracy. It's not a republic, but it is a democracy. And I've been there during this war. And they want to defeat Hamas. The people, what unites them is the defeating of Hamas. So some POS, egghead, in the bureaucracy, the Department of State says, well, too bad, they can't. Well, thank God these people weren't around when we were fighting Nazi Germany, and Imperial Japan, fascist Italy. And thank God they weren't around when we needed to win and wipe out these other countries and these other peoples and destroy their culture as well. We'll be back.
Mark Levin, tough as hell.
That's why I like Mark Levin. And I'm not sure a lot of people like him. He's tough as hell. But I like him. I love him.
Call in now. 877-381-3811.
Well, Ted Cruz, the great Ted Cruz, and by the way, he's in a hell of an election. We can't forget these guys. Well, he wasn't done with Barbara Leaf. Cut 10, go.
How much money has this administration flowed to Iran?
We have not flowed money to Iran.
Really?
We have money in accounts that are restricted for humanitarian use only.
And money's not fungible?
This regime will always spend money on these kinds of activities, the proxy activities.
When Joe Biden became president, how much was Iran selling in oil a day?
I don't have that figure for you, Senator.
Of course you don't. The answer is about 300,000 barrels a day. How much is Iran selling in oil a day now?
Somewhere short of 2 million.
So it went from 300,000 barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day. That's about $80 billion that the Ayatollah has made because your administration refuses to enforce oil sanctions.
No, we do enforce oil sanctions.
Well, you do so terribly because the number has increased almost tenfold.
But because of the strictures that we put on, the sanctions that we put on, the targeting that we've done, 230 alone directed towards those who traffic in Iranian oil, that has imposed a heavy cost on Iran. And we estimate that
Wait. You're saying it's a heavy cost. Mm-hmm. They went from 300,000 barrels a day to 2 million barrels a day. Where's the heavy cost? That's an extra 1.7 million barrels a day. That's $80 billion.
These people are so pathetic, and they're up against a superstar, you know. But they are disgusting liars, are they not? Yes, they are. They're disgusting liars. Now, Bernie Sanders has a message out there for you Americans. Bernie Sanders being a Marxist and a millionaire, as most Marxists in positions of power are. They're millionaires and billionaires. They're frauds, phonies, and fakes. Bernie Sanders is a Stalinist. As a young man, he joined a Stalinist kibbutz in Israel. He didn't join a kibbutz that was religious. He didn't join it for faith. He joined it for communism. Same with that miscreant, Thomas Friedman. I'm going to do one of these again, one of his. This is your life, Thomas Friedman. I've done it in the past, but nonetheless. So he says, look, if you want to vote for Biden. Now, that should tell everybody out there who's not a radical commie, a radical Islamist, not to vote for Biden. Because Bernie Sanders is saying you should. Because Bernie Sanders knows what you and I know, that Biden's destroying the country. So he's on CBS News yesterday. Why? Isn't he a radical extremist? I mean, isn't he the equivalent of a radical extremist on the quote-unquote right? See, I'm not on the right. I'm a constitutionalist. And the way I look at the political spectrum, it's like an oval. You have on the left, the hard left, the communists. You have on the hard right, the fascists. They call us right-wing. We're not right-wing. We're constitutionalists. So on the spectrum, we're right there in the middle. Not that we have a philosophy that's muddled in the middle. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about the political spectrum. And so this oval, as you move your finger around the oval, you go from the Marxists, the worst form of Marxists, the Stalinists, Trotskyites, Leninists, so forth, and you work your way to the socialists, you work your way and so forth, then you work your way all the way around to the fascists, and then you work your way back. You and I, we're in the middle. We want nothing to do with the fascists. We want nothing to do with the Marxists. We want nothing to do with the socialists. We want nothing to do with any of these people. And yet they're able to define the political spectrum. I reject it, and I'm not going to allow it. Not here, anyway. We represent the founding, the principles of our country, the Declaration and the Constitution, and so much more. So how can we be right-wing? We're not right-wing. But notice how they keep putting Bernie Sanders on, and I've been noting this with you. He's on MSNBC, he's on CNN, he's on CBS, he's on the Sunday shows. Guy's a communist bastard. That's what he is. He's a Stalinist. And the media keep promoting him. The way they keep promoting AOC, another Marxist. So here he is, cut 14, vouching for Biden, and that should tell you everything you need to know. Go.
But at the end of the day, if you want to have an economy in which we have health care for all, when we're moving
what
toward
does that mean, health care for all? I'm just curious. Does health care for all mean you're going to actually have timely health care? You're actually going to have access to the medicines you need? That you're actually going to get operations on time? Where does that occur? Anywhere on the face of the earth when you have health care for all, whatever that means. What he means is economic socialism. Where does that occur under economic socialism? People from Canada escape to the United States when they need surgeries. People from Britain try to get to the United States. Same with France, and I can go all over the world. So what is this? It's not like this hasn't been tried by humankind before. Marxism is, after all, about 180 years old. It's been tried to deadly effect. So what does he mean? We need health care for all. What does that mean? The same government that spends $42.5 billion on low-cost internet for everybody hasn't hooked up a single damn house? Is that who's going to run health care for all? Or $7 billion where they built 7 EV stations at $1 billion a station? Is that who's going to handle all the surgeries and technologies and all the rest of it? Are you kidding me? The government that is spending us into bankruptcy, driving inflation through the roof, that government? The government where you can't fire anybody, that government? Health care for all. What a dumb, stupid slob. I mean, seriously. Health care for all. Joe Biden's been hanging around like a bad rash for half a century. What do you mean health care for all? He was going on and on about Social Security and Medicare need to be cut. I have played those audio for you. I played the videos for you on Fox. And by the way, both of them are going bankrupt. Both of them. And Bernie Sanders his answer is, hey, government health care for all. Government health. If we rely on the government for health care, we're going to die. If we rely on the government for food, we're going to die. If we rely on the government for energy, we're going to freeze to death. We certainly aren't going to be driving very much. The government. What is the government? What is that? What is the government? Just Jello out there? No. What is the government? Are people hired into government because they have special development skills? Because they're expert surgeons? Because they're profound thinkers? No, of course not. So what is it? The government. Go ahead.
Read.
Shut up, you communist pig. That's right. They used to say capitalist pig. No, communist pig. The government for... What's this guy ever done? Nothing. If he wasn't a senator, what would he be? He'd be a homeless guy. He'd be a guy in a corner in a raincoat with cigarettes. Hey, come over here. One of those guys, don't you think, Mr. Producer? Oh, yeah. If he wasn't on the government dole, what the hell would he be? Seriously. It's like Joe Biden. Think about this. Think about this as I'm sitting here. If he wasn't president, what would he be qualified for? Absolutely nothing. And he's not qualified for president. Is there a single small business that would hire this guy? Let me ask you this. If you had a McDonald's franchise, would you make him a manager? No, you'd go broke. Would you put him in charge of the fryer? No, he'd burn himself. He'd get the cheeseburgers mixed up with the hamburgers, mixed up with the nuggets and the this. Diet Coke. I thought you said, I thought you said regular Coke. Can you imagine this idiot? Would you put him at the cash register? All these numbers, No, wouldn't hire him at the McDonald's. And by the way, they're good people that work at McDonald's, and I want to thank them. That's not my point. Guy's president of the United States. He's such an imbecile, he can't be indicted, according to the prosecutor. And if you notice, obviously, you're a right-wing, I don't know. For a whole week, he has to prepare for a debate, a whole week. Mr. Producer, I'm ready to debate anyone right now about anything. A whole week. He's president of the United States. Doesn't he know what he's done? Doesn't he know what the numbers are on the economy? Doesn't he know about the border? Doesn't he already know all these things? Isn't he briefed all the time? It's not like Donald Trump who's challenging him. This guy's been briefed on what the government's doing, how well they're doing it, blah, blah, blah. Every day he's supposed to be briefed, isn't he? So what is it? He's got 7 days. What are they doing with him? No, they're pumping him up with something. That's number one. Number two, repetition. Repetition. Joe, remember this. These 10 points. Here's a one-liner. Joe, use the one-liner. Joe, use the one-liner. Convicted felon. Convicted felon. Repeat after me. Convicted felon, Joe. Convicted felon. Oh, yeah. And use these 3 lines right here to get under Trump's skin. That's what this whole thing is a farce. You want to know the truth. So the guy can stand there for 90 minutes. They got the whole thing set up where CNN is set up to cut off Trump, as they wrote in the Federalist, and to help Biden. I mean, if you were really having a debate, you wouldn't have CNN anywhere in the building. Jake Tapper and Dana Bash. Is this a joke? Oh, and after that, it's ABC News. Is that a joke? So Biden gets every condition. I don't want any audience. Oh, okay. No interruptions. Oh, okay. I want to stand on the right side of the stage. At my left, you're... Okay, great. Yeah, that's whatever you want. And I want you to cut off the mic and hear, okay, Joe, what else do you want? What else do you want, Joe? Okay, now I'll debate. Takes a week off. Now, for him, it's normal. He's been absent 40% of the time as president, right? He's studying. He's studying? It's the president. Doesn't he know what the hell he's talking about? I'm serious about this. He should be able to hit every subject. Boom, 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 boom. But it's going to be attacked. Tell him this and tell him that. Hit him here. Say convicted. Get him angry. Get him angry. I'll be right back.
Mark Levin.
I want to salute all you heroes out there. God bless each and every one of you. It's a great blessing to be here and to be here with you. Let's do it again tomorrow. What do you say? And I'll see you tomorrow. God bless.